Hi everyone, Nick from Accounting Add-ons here, and in this video I'll show you how to get Excel data into Power BI so that it can be refreshed online. And we'll use SharePoint to provide this Excel data. Now if you've tried getting Excel data into Power BI, you might have found that while it works perfectly well on the desktop, it complains about errors once it's online. So we'll use SharePoint to host this Excel data online so that it can be used regardless of where you're located. Let's get into it. So before we go through and show you how to fix the problem, we'll show you why the problem occurs in the first place. Now I've got an empty Power BI dashboard here, and most people typically will pull data from Excel using the Import Data from Excel button. They'll then browse to their file they want to import. I'll use my test file here, and they'll click Open. And what this will do is allow them to pull the tables of Excel data into their workbook. Now this looks like it works beautifully at a cursory glance, but the issue that you get is the way the data is pulled is not going to work on the cloud. If I right click on my query and choose Edit Query, you'll actually see in the source navigation step that it uses this function, excel.workbook, file.contents, and then it passes the path to the actual file that I've browsed. Now the issue you'll get is that that file path will be local machine based, as in this file is actually on my D drive under a test folder and it's called test.xlsx. Now if I publish it to the cloud, Power BI Online won't have access to that file, therefore the refresh won't be able to be scheduled and it won't work. You won't be able to configure it. So to fix that, you either have to pull that Excel file from SharePoint or OneDrive Personal. And I'll show you how to do it through SharePoint. The only thing that'll need to be changed is that file.contents instruction. It'll need to become a web.contents instruction, and instead of pointing to the D drive, it'll point to the file on SharePoint. So first up, we'll need to upload our file to SharePoint. So we'll go to our SharePoint site. We'll go to our development folder and testing. Then I'll choose the upload button, files, and I'll upload my test data file. Now once it's uploaded, I can click on the vertical ... button and choose details. Then I can go more details, and next to the path button has a little copy button, and I can copy the link. And this is the link that I'll need for Power BI. Now that we've got the URL, I'll show you a few different ways that you can actually update your workbook to make use of that URL. First up, I'll copy it. I'll then return to my Power BI dashboard. And in the original introduction where I showed you the file.contents and the hard-coded path, I can actually change this to be web.contents and paste my URL in between double quotes and hit enter. Now we'll be prompted to edit my credentials. I'll click the button, I'll choose organizational account, and I'll click sign in and sign in to SharePoint. I'll click connect. When it finishes refreshing, it'll actually show you the same tables down the page. And if I hit the refresh button here, you'll actually see very quickly that it actually still refreshes and doesn't throw up any errors. So that's one approach to update an existing feed to point to the web equivalent of that file in SharePoint. Now another approach is I can right click in the query section, choose new query, and choose web. I can then paste my URL in and click OK, and it shall bring the same tables down the page. So I can select my table 1 and I click OK. And this will essentially do all the previous steps exactly the same. So you'll actually see this source query is exactly the same as this one here. So that's another approach. Now that approach works if your file is fairly small. If it's too large, you might end up having errors, and you should be able to persevere through. But if that doesn't work, there's a third option you can use. Now the third option is to actually create the blank query from scratch. And I'll roughly show you how to do it, but in a nutshell, it's just a matter of mimicking this formula that you see here. So first thing, we'll right click, new query, blank query. We'll make it equal to Exccel.workbook. We'll pass web.contents. We'll put our URL in there, and in between the two closing parentheses, we'll put comma null, comma false. We'll click out, and this will actually connect to the cloud, pull our data. We can then click on, let's say, table 1 instead of sheet 1. We'll click on table 1, and then we've actually navigated to our data. And that is essentially the exact same steps, except done manually. So it doesn't really matter what approach you take. All three approaches will end up with the exact same formulas and the same result. What we can now do is close and apply. Wait for the data to load. Once the data is loaded, I'll create a very simple table. I'll drag my fields in, just so we've got something to appear. And I'll show you how to configure it online. So I'll go File, Publish, Publish to Power BI. I'll hit Save. I'll choose my workspace, and I'll wait for it to be published. Now once it's published, I'll jump to the web browser and go to app.powerbi.com. I'll find my workspace, and in my data set, I'll click on the ... button and choose Settings. Under Data Source Credentials, I'll find the web entry and click Edit. I'll check the URL, make sure it's the right one. I'll want to use OAuth 2 and Organizational as the privacy levels, and I'll click Sign In. I'll then follow the prompts to log in to SharePoint, and I'm done. So that's it for the video. I hope you found it interesting, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.